Introduction of unemployment and inflation. Unemployed is a person who in working age is unable to find employment yet would prefer full-time. Meanwhile, inflation is a widespread rise in the cost of goods and services throughout an economy. The purchasing power of money decreases when the general price level rises. There has been an inverse association between inflation and unemployment. This implies that unemployment decreases as inflation increases. Higher employment results in reduced inflation. When unemployment is high, the number of people looking for work significantly exceeds the number of jobs available. When unemployment is low, firm has more demand than there are available workers. Employers frequently have to offer higher wage in such a competitive labor market in order to recruit workers, which eventually result in escalating wage inflation. Inflation is less significant than unemployment. Rising wage should result in higher pricing for goods and services in an economy, which is ultimately raise the total inflation rate since wage and salaries are significant input costs for business. When unemployment is low, there are more job needs than there are workers to fill them. On the other side, when unemployment increases, there are far more job seekers than there are open positions. How does inflation affect this? When there is low unemployment and more people are employed, more consumers have extra money to spend on goods, which increase demand for those things. Price and move as a result. During time of severe unemployment, consumers make fewer purchases, which push down price and lower inflation.
The statistics show the Malaysian's inflation rate from July 2021 to May 2022. In May of 2022, Malaysian inflation rate was increased to 2.8% higher than the previous month, which amounted to 2.3% and defeated the market expectation of gain 2.6%. Besides reaching the highest level since last December, that amounted to 3.2%. In Jan 2022, inflation rate was decreased from 3.2% on December 2021 to 2.3% and a huge decrease of 0.9%. Meanwhile, in 2021, there was a lower amount of inflation which amounted to 2% only in August 2021. In year of 2022, there was 2 months that have the same inflation rate, which is February and March, that amounted to 2.2%. Not so long ago, the inflation keeps increasing in month to month until now. According to the Department of Statistics Malaysia, a total of 184 food items out of a total of 552 items in the CPI basket recorded an increase. Next, we move on to the unemployment rate in Malaysia. These statistics show the unemployment rate in Malaysia from the year of 2011 to 2022. In 2022, the unemployment rate increased from the previous year. This amounted to 3.31% to 4.55%, and a 1.24% change. Meanwhile, the year with the lowest unemployment rate is 2014 with 2.88%. Other than that, the unemployment rate started increasing from 2015 to 2020. and has not had the opportunity to decrease. But when we look up to the statistic, we can see that it starts from point to point and increase a little bit and not move drastically, instead of from 2019 to 2020. Therefore, unemployment generally falls during times of economic prosperity and rises during times of economic downturn, putting significant strain on public finance as tax revenue falls and social safety net cost rises. Apart from that, the current level of unemployment, whether in Malaysia or anywhere, will undoubtedly occur, whether in the long term or in the short term. So, how does Malaysia unemployment problem arises? Firstly, unemployment usually arises because of market turnover. For example, consider the willingness of employees who are determined to leave their jobs. Some unemployed workers save a certain amount of money for their own use during their working period and decide to quit once they have accumulated the required amount. They will be out of work for a while until they can find a job that pays more. The frictional period is the time it takes to find a new job. This type of unemployment can also occur if an employee prefers to move around until they find a better job in another workplace.
Next is causes. Inflation in Malaysia is also brought by COVID-19. This is because Bank Negara Malaysia, which expect Malaysian inflation to range for this year, has had trouble projecting inflation rate as a result of both domestic and international economic changes. From June 30, the Malaysian government will no longer be subsidizing food items like chicken and eggs and 235 kg bottles of palm cooking oil. This decision is anticipated to result in higher prices for this product, which will hurt consumers, particularly those in B40 and M40 groups. There are no longer any selling price limitation due to the elimination of the subsidy. Since the COVID-19 outbreak struck Malaysia, more than 800,000 people have lost their employment and other means of income. This result from the government is to in direction to stop the problem of the proliferation COVID-19 among workers, which led to the closure of several non-essential companies and economic sector. On the other side, business and enterprise incurred significant losses as a result of having to fire employees in order to pay workers' salaries and because there was no profit for them to keep. The effect is an increase in the employment rate. As a result, the government has taken action to offer support and assistance through the employees' insurance system and job searching through the My Future Job portal. What is the effect on society and economy? This inflation will have a negative impact on society by raising living expenses and lowering consumer buying power. The M40 and B40 groups, inflation will undoubtedly have an impact on a person's life if their income does not rise at a pace that is equal to or greater than the rate of inflation. As a result, it is preferable that while choosing what product to purchase, one considers necessities rather than uses. An stable economy will be the outcome of inflation impact on the economy. This is due to the decline in currency value, which result in short-term capital outflow to other countries. The Federal Reserve, the U.S. Central Bank, boosted short-term interest rates by 0.5%, which was the primary reason for the decline. In addition, the International Monetary Fund has warned that new economic inflation rates will develop and will harm Malaysia, since we are expected to see an increase of up to 8% this year as a result of the Ukraine crisis and supply chain disruption. Loss of economic sources and low self-esteem are two effects on employment on society. This is due to the financial difficulty that long-term unemployed or retrenched workers will have in order to pay for their living expenses. As a result, they will lose their self-confidence and dignity, especially the family head will be more impressed by this. When people have trouble finding this source of income, it can also cause them to become very frustrated and in need of money desperately, which can lead to criminal activity like theft and robbery, to the point where they feel hopeless as a result of life difficulties and committing suicide. The economy will be impacted by a rise in employment and a significant deficit in the gross national product. As a result, it will result in losses to the government revenue, which is typically acquired through personal taxes, but it is now being paid by many due to employment. This will have an impact on the national economy and development, and all planned development projects will need to be delayed, which will make them impossible to complete.
Monetary policy is currently the main weapon for reducing inflation. The important role of monetary policy in containing inflation is that it uses the regulation of the money supply to maintain market stability. Some monetarists continue to emphasize the need to keep the money supply growing steadily and use monetary policy to keep inflation under control. However, because Bank Negara Malaysia must maintain low inflation, it must implement monetary policies that involve raising interest rates and reducing the money supply. Bank Negara Malaysia can implement monetary policy through a number of instruments, including open market operations and the legal reserve requirement. The first instrument is open market operation. An economy's money supply is directly impacted by open market operations, which include the central bank's purchases and sales of government securities on the open market. By purchasing or selling government bonds, open market operations can be utilized to decrease or enhance the amount of money in circulation. In order to decrease the amount of money in circulation, Bank Negara Malaysia may sell its bonds to either commercial banks or to the general public. For example, a central bank like the Bank Negara Malaysia can sell its securities to private corporations such as Sime Darby and government-linked companies like Telekom Malaysia Berhad and Petronas Berhad to control inflation. Bank Negara Malaysia has the option to sell its bonds in order to remove money from the system if it wants to slow down economic growth. However, if it wants to enhance its GDP, it can buy back its bonds to give people more money to spend on the market. The authorized interbank institutions in the domestic interbank market are the counterparties of the bank for monetary activities. Standing facilities and other monetary operations carried out by the bank are open to direct participation from all qualified interbank participants. However, only appointed principal dealers are permitted to participate in Bank Negara Monetary Notes (BNMS) auctions. Moreover, daily monetary activities with all interbank participants are carried out via electronic auctions on the fully automated system for issuing or tendering, which is accessible online, FAST. The next one is legal reserve requirement. As is well known, the reserve requirement is a rule issued by the central bank that establishes the minimal reserve that each commercial entity must retain in relation to customer deposits and notes. Changing the number of loans available has the effect of affecting the interest rate and borrowing of the nation. By controlling and limiting the reserve ratio, the central bank can affect how much money commercial banks are willing to lend to the general public. Commercial banks that hold a limited access requirement will charge higher interest rates on loans to the general public. Since the interest rate is higher, people are incentivized to spend less and save more. Plus, it will make commercial banks less able to make loans, which will result in a reduction in the amount of money available to the economy. However, Bank Negara Malaysia should be urged to adjust the reserve requirement under certain scenarios rather than just generally. For example, the extension of the ability for financial institutions to use Malaysian government securities (MGS) and Malaysian Government Investment Issue (MGII) to comply with statutory reserve requirement (SRR) until 31st December 2022 is being announced by Bank Negara Malaysia. Until May 31st, 2021, this flexibility is in effect. At 2.00%, the statutory reserve requirement ratio is constant. Hence, the choice to increase the flexibility is a result of Bank Negara Malaysia's ongoing effort to make sure there is enough liquidity to sustain the financial intermediation process.
public policy used by Malaysia to overcome unemployment issue. A fiscal policy is one that modifies the ratio of taxation to expenditure in order to influence overall demand. Taxation, public debt, government expenditure and revenue are all aspects of fiscal policy that affect how the government controls the economy. They have two types of fiscal policy, that is contractionary and expansionary. The first is by reducing tax. Fiscal policy may lower unemployment through escalating economic growth and aggregate demand. The government will need to adopt an expansive fiscal strategy, which entail lowering taxes while raising expenditure, reduce taxes and hedge disposable income, which in turn encourage consumers to consume more, increasing aggregate demand (AD). The built-in effect of particularly improbable economic development make the tax structure a lever that is prone to increase. In order to fulfill the nation's development goal and realize our shared prosperity vision, the government is optimistic that its budgetary policy will guarantee the economic growth prospect remain solid in the medium to longer term. Second is by increasing government spending. Government spending has a significant impact on the economy of the nation. The yearly budget has planned for allocating funds to guarantee that the growth and development of Malaysia, as well as the enjoyment of all Malaysians, may be improved. The government expenditure have helped this nation progress in a number of areas. Public employment possibilities may be created by boosting government spending on critical areas of the economy. As a result, the unemployment issue can be mitigated.
In the nutshell, unemployment and inflation are major social and economic issues that affects everything. To stabilize inflation and unemployment in the national economy, a stronger unemployment assessment system should be implemented to determine the cause of unemployment and how to better address them. Unemployment and inflation have historically had inverse relationship, according to the Phillips curve. This finding has established a solid foundation for macroeconomics management overall. For economic development and inflation stabilization, government and individuals should take steps to boost productivity and raise living standards.